Imagine working your night shift, going about your usual tasks when suddenly something strange happens. It was just another day at the Grand Evermore, a luxurious hotel that Dana knew like the back of her hand. She was used to the quiet rhythm of the night shift, the dim lights, the distant hum of ice machines, and the soft murmur of conversation from a few employees were all that filled the air. Dana was a dedicated worker, with years of experience. During her shift, she handled the small maintenance tasks that others often overlooked, fixing furniture, cleaning common areas, and ensuring the hotel was spotless for the next day's guests. However, that night, everything changed. It was around 10:30 p.m. when they entered the lobby. A well-dressed man in a dark suit and tie walked confidently toward the reception desk. Dana didn't pay much attention at first, but something caught her eye. What she did notice was the little girl beside him, no more than 10 years old, with wide eyes and an expression of awe that, for some reason, didn't fit the elegant and sophisticated atmosphere of the place. The girl wore a dirty dress, stained with dirt, completely out of place in the pristine luxury of the hotel. As Dana observed them from a distance, she felt an odd discomfort, as if something was off, as if there was something she wasn't seeing clearly. The girl seemed fascinated by the lobby, the expensive furniture, the luxurious carpets, as if she were in a completely different world. She kept looking up at the crystal chandeliers and ornate columns, but Dana couldn't help but notice how strange it was that this girl, so clearly captivated by the luxury, didn't fit in. Her worn-out clothes and bare feet gave the impression that she didn't belong in this world of gold and marble. The scene kept replaying in Dana's mind as she continued her work, unable to shake the growing unease in her chest. Something wasn't right, but she didn't know what. She was used to seeing all kinds of people at the hotel, but this pair, the man and his daughter, unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. Though she tried to push the feeling aside, the discomfort only grew with each passing minute. When the man and the girl finally approached the reception desk, Dana couldn't help but watch them more closely, wondering if her intuition was correct, if something strange was happening right before her eyes. Dana couldn't get the image out of her head. As she continued with her tasks, the unease in her chest grew stronger. She knew she had to keep working, but something inside her urged her to take a closer look at this strange pair of guests. At the reception desk, the man, now identified as Mr. Langley, signed papers with an irritating speed, as if he wanted everything to be over quickly, while the girl, Sophie, continued to gaze at the luxurious details of the lobby with a fascination that seemed almost childlike. Yet at the same time, something about it felt completely foreign. The girl seemed to enjoy her surroundings, but not in a natural way. Something about her behavior, her discomfort with everything around her, made Dana feel even more uneasy. There was something deeply off about the scene, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As Dana cleaned a nearby table, she couldn't help but overhear the small conversations among the hotel staff, but her mind kept returning to the strange pair in front of her. There was something about the girl that kept bothering her, something that couldn't be explained with words but was there, palpable in the air. When Mr. Langley and his daughter finally headed to their room, Dana couldn't help but watch them as they walked down the hallway, wondering what would happen to them in the hours to come. As she watched them, a feeling of distrust took hold of her. There was something very strange about their behavior, and Dana, though she couldn't name her instinct, knew she couldn't let it go. As the minutes passed, Dana's unease became more palpable. She knew she shouldn't get too involved, that it wasn't her place to question the hotel's guests, but something inside her told her she had to do something. When Ronald, the receptionist, asked her to escort Mr. Langley and Sophie to their suite, Dana couldn't help but feel even more tense. Her mind kept wondering why the man had requested her specifically, as if he didn't want anyone else interacting with the girl. The walk to the suite, though short, felt like an eternity. As they rode the elevator, Dana could feel Sophie's growing discomfort. The girl who had been so fascinated by the lobby now seemed tired, almost lifeless, as if she wasn't enjoying the luxury around her. As Dana led them down the hallway, she noticed Sophie shrinking into herself, as if she didn't want to be seen, clutching her backpack tightly, as if it were her only connection to the world she knew. Dana thought maybe she was overthinking the situation, that perhaps Sophie was just a shy girl, but the unease didn't go away. When they reached the suite, Mr. Langley's behavior made it clear that something wasn't right. He had asked her not to give them a tour of the room and seemed impatient, as if everything were a nuisance. But the worst part was the contrast between the man's attitude and Sophie's passivity. When he ordered a $2,500 bottle of wine and 2 robes, Dana couldn't help but feel like she was watching a play she didn't understand, one where something much bigger was happening, and she had no idea how to stop it. Dana couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened that night. Mr. Langley's behavior had left her puzzled, but the worst part was the feeling that something was off about his relationship with Sophie. As she walked away from the suite after delivering the items, the image of the girl sitting alone on the couch, staring at the room with a mix of fascination and confusion, haunted her. When she returned to the reception desk, Dana tried to focus on her work, but the questions kept swirling in her head. Why was such a young girl alone with a man who seemed to be her father, yet their behavior was so strange? Why did she only have a worn-out backpack and a small suitcase? Why didn't Sophie seem to enjoy the luxury around her? Dana thought maybe she was overreacting, that she was just overwhelmed by the night shift, but the unease persisted. It was then, as she passed by the hotel kitchen, that she overheard a conversation between the cooks that left her even more unsettled. They had received a strange order from Mr. Langley's suite, a mix of dishes that made no sense: burgers, fries, spaghetti, mac and cheese. Typical kids' food. But there were also more sophisticated orders: canapes and other exclusive hotel bites. Dana couldn't help but think that this mix of foods reflected what she felt inside, as if Sophie were being treated like a child, but at the same time something much more complex. She didn't understand what was happening, but her gut told her something bad was going on. It was at that moment that she decided she couldn't ignore the feeling any longer. She had to do something, but she didn't know where to start. The situation had gone from a simple discomfort to something she couldn't let go. The night dragged on, and Dana's unease grew with each passing minute. She couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening to Sophie, and the pieces of the puzzle she had been gathering in her mind began to fit together in an alarming way. Every time she passed by Mr. Langley's suite, she felt a weight in her stomach, as if something was wrong behind those closed doors. It was then that she decided she couldn't ignore it any longer. Dana knew she was risking her job, but at that moment, all that mattered was the girl's safety. She was at a crossroads: follow the rules and let it all happen, or risk facing the consequences to protect a child who clearly needed help. She decided she couldn't live with the doubt of not having done anything. It was in that moment that she entered the suite without anyone seeing her, knowing she could lose her job over this, but feeling she had to act. When she crossed the threshold and saw Sophie, something inside her broke. The girl was on the couch, curled up in a corner, her face pale and her expression empty. Dana tried not to panic, but what she saw confirmed her worst fears. The room was in chaos, with food spilled all over the floor and the smell of wine filling the air. On the table were several empty wine bottles and a small capsule with traces of white powder, which Dana instantly recognized as something far more serious than alcohol. Dana's heart raced as she realized what had happened. Sophie hadn't just been exposed to alcohol, she had been drugged. In that moment, anger and sadness mixed inside her. Without thinking twice, Dana approached Sophie, gently lifted her, and laid her on the couch, trying to wake her. Though the girl stirred slightly, she remained unconscious, her breathing weak. Dana knew she had to do something. She couldn't let this go unnoticed. She didn't care what might happen. All that mattered was saving Sophie. Fear gripped Dana as she realized what she had just discovered. Sophie, a young girl, had been the victim of something she couldn't even imagine. With trembling hands, Dana tried to remember what to do in a situation like this. She knew she couldn't just stay there, she had to call for help. But the fear of the consequences paralyzed her. What if what she had seen wasn't enough? What if Mr. Langley had enough power to ruin her if she spoke up? Even so, in that moment, her morals and sense of justice were stronger than any fear. She couldn't let Sophie continue to be a victim of that man. She decided the first thing she had to do was call the police, but as she tried to leave the room and grab the phone, something stopped her. The sound of the door opening again made her freeze. It was just a split second, but it was enough to make Dana's heart stop. It was him. Mr. Langley had returned. For a moment, Dana thought about hiding, about escaping to avoid a confrontation, but a force within her kept her steady. She couldn't let him continue what he was doing. With her body tense, Dana prepared for the worst. The man entered the room with firm steps, and as he saw the scene, his eyes widened immediately. The anger on his face was evident, but something in his gaze also showed fear. Dana faced him with the calm she had left, though inside she felt her life was about to change completely. She knew there was no turning back. The man stared at her, but Dana didn't back down. She knew she had to do the right thing, no matter what came next. "What have you done?" he asked in a low, dangerous voice as he approached her, his face hardened with anger. Dana swallowed, but her determination kept her gaze steady. It was time to fight for what she knew was right. The tension in the room was unbearable. Dana felt her breathing becoming more and more erratic as Mr. Langley stared at her with a fierce gaze, as if waiting for her to back down. But she couldn't. She wasn't going to let him get away with it. She knew she had to stay calm, that she couldn't let fear take over. Though her body trembled, her words came out firm. "I know what you did. I know you drugged her, that you've been manipulating her." Langley's face twisted for a moment as if he were calculating his next move. The look in his eyes shifted from anger to something darker. But Dana didn't back down, and in that moment, she felt as if all the determination in her life had concentrated on that decision. She wasn't going to let Sophie suffer anymore. She couldn't. At that precise moment, the sound of the phone in the room reminded her that she could still take action. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her cell phone, and began dialing the emergency number, her heart pounding in her chest. As she dialed, she felt the man watching her, his presence growing more intimidating, as if waiting for her to make a mistake, something that would give him a chance to escape. But Dana had already crossed the line. The emergency operator answered quickly, and it was in that moment that the words began to spill out of her mouth unfiltered. "I'm at the Grand Evermore, Suite 1845. There's a girl here, she's been drugged, and I need help immediately. The man with her is dangerous. Please come quickly." She couldn't stop. She couldn't turn back. The police were on their way, but the fear of potential repercussions still weighed on her. What worried her most was that even though the man was trapped at that moment, she didn't know how much control he had over what would happen next. What would happen when the police arrived? What if her story wasn't enough? What if it was all a misunderstanding? But despite her doubts, Dana felt she had done the right thing. Dana's anxiety grew with every passing second, as if the weight of the world were on her shoulders. She knew the police were on their way, but the silence of the hotel and the tension in the air made her feel like she was trapped in an endless nightmare. She didn't know what would happen when the authorities arrived, but she knew she couldn't turn back. That man, Mr. Langley, was desperate to escape. She could see it in his eyes, a mix of anger and fear. He knew that if he were caught, it would all be over for him. And Sophie, the poor girl, was still there, semi-conscious, slowly recovering from the drugs he had given her. The scene was about to change forever. Dana was about to face the consequences of her actions. The silence of the hallway was broken by the sound of the elevator doors opening and the firm steps of the police officers entering the hotel lobby. Dana could feel her heart beating faster, but she didn't move. She knew there was nothing left to do. The decision had been made. When the officers entered the room, Dana stayed by Sophie's side, the girl still unconscious, but now breathing more calmly. She looked at the officers and, without hesitation, told them everything she had seen and heard. What happened next was a mix of emotions, a deep relief knowing that Sophie was finally safe, but also the fear of the consequences her decision might bring. Mr. Langley, who had already tried to flee, was immediately arrested by the police. Dana watched everything from a distance, still in shock, as the officers took the man away and Sophie was taken to receive medical care. The feeling that something much bigger had been happening there was stronger than ever, but Dana knew she had done the right thing. The truth had come to light. and she had done everything she could to ensure Sophie's safety. Though she knew her future at the hotel was uncertain, she felt an inner peace she had never experienced before. Nothing else mattered, only making sure that girl had the chance for a better life. The next day began like any other, but for Dana, everything had changed. The tranquility she had once felt at the hotel had completely vanished. Though the sunrise brought a new light, for her, everything still felt shrouded in disbelief. She was in the lobby, as always, cleaning tables and preparing the area for new guests, but her mind kept returning to the events of the previous night. She couldn't stop thinking about Sophie and everything that had happened. As she cleaned, she overheard her co-workers gossiping about the scandal caused by Mr. Langley's arrest. Some saw it as an opportunity to share rumors. Others treated it as just another event to talk about for a few days. But Dana couldn't help but feel different. Her heart was divided. On one hand, she felt relieved that Sophie was now safe, but on the other, she couldn't stop wondering if she had done enough. Had she been brave? Had she done the right thing? In her mind, the questions kept tormenting her, but at the same time, something inside her told her yes, she had done what she had to do. In those moments of doubt, she realized something important. It wasn't about whether she would lose her job or the personal repercussions that might arise. What mattered was that she had saved a girl, that she had had the courage to face a situation many would have preferred to ignore. In the end, Dana knew that what had changed the most wasn't her life at the hotel, but herself. That night had marked her so deeply that even if things returned to normal, she would never be the same person again. Time passed, and though Dana continued working at the hotel, something in her had changed forever. She knew her life would never be the same after that night. Though she was grateful for having been able to save Sophie, she couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened and how she had faced something much bigger than herself. Mr. Langley's case was resolved and justice was served, but Dana knew the real battle was internal. She had learned a lesson she would never forget: the importance of listening to her intuition, of not ignoring those small signs that warn us when something is wrong. She learned that even when problems seem too big to face, it's always worth standing up and doing the right thing, even when everything seems to be against you. Though her life at the hotel would never be the same, Dana found an inner peace that stayed with her forever. Sophie, for her part, received the help she needed and found a new path, away from the shadows of a dark past. Dana, though she would never seek it, became a silent hero in her own life and in the lives of others like Sophie. And though the night had been long, and the battle within her just as intense in the end, what she had gained couldn't be measured by tangible rewards, but by the certainty of having done the right thing. She never forgot what happened that night. Sophie's story marked her forever, and Dana vowed to keep fighting for what was right no matter the consequences. Because in the end, what matters is that someone, even if it's just one person, did the right thing when it was needed most.